Welcome back. I'm glad you're here, because today, we're re-stepping into a place most people never dare to look: the silent terrain of a narcissist's mind after a long separation. Not the mask they wear online, not the empty confidence they project to their friends. I'm talking about what they think when the room is dark, when there's no audience, when your absence echoes louder than your presence ever did. There comes a moment, months or even years after the breakup, when a question starts haunting you. Do they think about me at all? It sneaks into your thoughts on quiet nights or during moments when life feels still. And today, we're going to answer that question with brutal honesty, because the truth is not gentle, and it's not comforting. It's psychological, primal, and darker than most expect. You see, narcissists do not process separation the way normal people do. Time doesn't bring clarity for them. It brings agitation, irritation, obsession. Because a narcissist doesn't miss youth, they miss the version of themselves they were when you were in their orbit. Your long silence becomes a threat, a wound, a reminder that their control was never as secure as they believed. The haunting begins when they realize they cannot predict you anymore. The person they believed they had fully mapped your emotions, your reactions, your vulnerabilities suddenly disappears from their psychological radar. That void terrifies them more than they will ever admit. Because what they can't monitor, they can't manipulate, and what they can't manipulate, they cannot own. This is where the real unraveling starts. Not the day you walked away, not the day the relationship ended, but the day they realize you haven't looked back. When the narcissist's mind starts spinning in a loop of unanswered questions. Why haven't they broken? Why aren't they trying to return? Who are they becoming without me? These questions scratch at their ego like claws. They replay old conversations, not to understand you, but to analyze their own power. They search for the moment when they lost you, even though they were the one who pushed you away. Narcissists can't comprehend losing control without gaining insight, so your silence becomes an unsolvable equation, one that keeps them awake long after midnight. And here's the part most people never hear. Narcissists think about you randomly. They think about you ritualistically, in cycles. When they feel rejected, when they feel bored, when they need validation, when something in their new supply reminds them of something you did better. You are woven into the emotional cracks of their ego, whether they like it or not. Your long separation doesn't erase your impact, it magnifies it, because narcissists attach themselves not to people, but to emotional imprints, to moments of power, to memories where they felt dominant, to reactions they pulled out of you. And when you're gone, those imprints echo louder, sharper, more violently. You become the one that got away, not in romance, but in control. This is the part where denial becomes their shield. They tell themselves you're irrelevant. They brag about how over it they are. They laugh with their new supply. They pretend your silence doesn't affect them. But every performance hides a truth they cannot escape. Your absence forces them to confront the one thing they fear most: life without an audience. So tonight, as we begin this deep dive, I want you to hold one truth close. Separation doesn't free the narcissist the way it frees you. It traps them, it corners them, it leaves them alone with a version of themselves they were never built to face. And the question haunting you, what do they think about me now, is about to be answered with more clarity than you ever expected. The first thing you need to understand is this: narcissists are not haunted by memories the way normal people are. They're haunted by ego injuries. Your silence was not a neutral event. Cliff was an emotional wound, a direct hit to the identity they carefully manufactured. And the longer the silence lasts, the deeper that wound grows, turning into an itch they cannot soothe. In the beginning, they assume you're playing a game. They tell themselves you're waiting, watching, hurting. But as days turn into weeks, and weeks into months, the narcissist's confidence begins to crack. They start checking your social media in the dark, lurking through your old posts, searching for any sign that you still care, and your absence becomes a psychological trigger. Their minds start spiraling into comparisons. Who are they talking to now? Who replaced me? Who is giving them the attention that used to belong to me? These thoughts burn them from the inside, because narcissists survive on exclusive access. The idea that you've given your attention to someone else, someone healthier, stronger, more stable, shreds their ego like glass. And here's the darker truth. The narcissist begins rewriting history to protect their pride. They tell themselves you were obsessed with them, that you were always the one clinging, that you were emotionally dependent. Even if none of that was true, They twist the narrative to soothe their fear. But every lie they tell themselves creates another fracture in their internal world. When the lies stop working, the resentment creeps in. They start blaming you for the silence they caused. They're ungrateful. They tell themselves they're weak. They're disrespectful. This projected anger isn't about who you are, it's about the growing discomfort inside them. Narcissists cannot tolerate vulnerability, so they convert it into hostility. But beneath the hostility is something even more disturbing: curiosity. A kind of psychological itch they cannot scratch. They wonder what your life looks like now, what your mornings feel like without them, what new habits you've built, what new people you've opened your heart to. The mystery eats at them, because narcissists fear the unknown more than they fear the truth. This is when they begin stalking you emotionally from a distance, not with affection, but with analysis. They scan every photo, every update, every silence, looking for signs of weakness. They need evidence that you're suffering without them, because if you're not, then everything they believed about themselves collapses. Your happiness becomes their psychological threat. The longer the separation lasts, the more they obsess over the version of you that exists in their mind. Not the real you, the one growing, healing, and rebuilding, but the one they constructed to maintain control. That version becomes distorted, idealized, demonized, and rewritten depending on what their ego needs at any given moment. Why does this happen? Because narcissists attach not to people, but to control loops. When those loops break, they experience withdrawal, emotional, psychological, and neurological. You were once a predictable source of response. Now you're a blank page they can't read. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than losing access to a source they believed they owned. So what do they secretly think now? They think you've changed. They think you've become unpredictable. They think you've grown colder, stronger, harder to access. And that terrifies them. Because if you evolved beyond them, then the entire dynamic, the entire relationship was never as one-sided as they wanted to believe. Your silence is rewriting their reality, piece by piece. Here's where everything flips the moment the narcissist realizes you're not coming back. It doesn't happen suddenly. It creeps in like a slow, suffocating shadow. One morning they wake up and notice they haven't checked your profile in days. Not because they're healed, but because the fear is too overwhelming. They sense the shift, they feel the distance, and for the first time, they panic. This panic isn't dramatic or loud. It's quiet, sickening. It hits them in the small moments when they reach for their phone out of habit and realize there's nothing to look for. When they hear a song that once connected them to you. When they try to distract themselves with new people, only to feel nothing. This is when they finally understand they miscalculated you. They believed, with absolute confidence, that you would chase them, that you would crack first, that your emotions would overpower your logic. But instead, you built a life beyond their reach, and that realization hits them like a psychological earthquake. They start replaying every moment, searching for the exact second they lost control. They cannot find it. That terrifies them. This is when they start contacting old friends, mutual acquaintances, anyone who might know something about your life. They ask subtle questions, disguised as casual conversation, but their motive is pure desperation. They need intel. They need reassurance. They need to know you haven't forgotten them. Every unanswered question feels like a door slamming on their ego. Then comes the comparison spiral. They start measuring themselves against whoever they think is in your life now. They imagine someone more stable, kinder, more grounded, someone who doesn't fall apart the moment they aren't worshipped. They imagine you laughing, healing, growing in ways that were impossible with them. These images destroy them. Next, they try to distract themselves by returning to old patterns, flirting, posting attention-seeking content, reconnecting with people they once ignored, but none of it works. The rush they used to feel is gone, because their ego isn't craving new validation, it's craving yours, and nothing else can replicate the specific psychological control they once had. And here's the twist. The narcissist begins romanticizing you. Not the real you, the one who cried, suffered, questioned, fought, but an edited version that flatters their ego. They start believing you were the one who understood them, the one they should have treated better, the one they didn't appreciate. But this fantasy isn't love. It's regret mixed with entitlement. They begin rewriting the breakup in their mind, casting themselves as the misunderstood victim. In their new script, you are the one who abandoned them. This distortion protects their ego, but it also deepens their obsession. Because if they're the victim, then you owe them attention. And your silence becomes an unforgivable betrayal. This is when you see the first signs of them cracking. Impulsive messages they don't send, angry drafts sitting in their notes app, late night scrolling through your old photos, arguments with themselves about why you're silent. Internally, the narcissist is splitting, one part blaming you, one part begging for you, one part terrified of you, one part furious at you. And once they hit this point, there's no going back. This is where their fear transforms into obsession. Your silence isn't just an absence anymore, it's a psychological mirror forcing them to confront the one truth they never wanted to face. You were always the one with real emotional power. They just never saw it until you walked away and never looked back. This is where the narcissist starts to unravel. Your silence becomes a mirror reflecting their deepest insecurity, that they were never as powerful as they believed. They start replaying every moment as if searching for evidence that you still cared. But every memory feels like a ghost, now untouchable, unresponsive, uninterested. The absence of your reaction is louder than any argument they ever won. The collapse begins internally. Their mind becomes a battlefield. On one side, their ego, screaming that you should have chased them. On the other, reality, whispering that you didn't. That whisper turns into a roar. It eats at them during the quiet hours, when their distractions fail. That's when they realize you were the emotional anchor, the stability they took for granted. Socially, they start slipping. They try to maintain their facade, smiling, posting, pretending everything is perfect. But cracks appear. They become overly reactive, irritated, defensive. People around them sense something is off. They're less charming, less composed. The narcissist hates this loss of control, because their image is everything, and you're the reason it's crumbling. Their new supply, if they have one, begins to feel the pressure. Narcissists don't handle emotional instability well, and when their ego is injured, they lash out, withdraw, or behave erratically. The new person starts noticing the comparisons they aren't supposed to hear. The way the narcissist gets quiet when your name comes up, or how they react to anything that reminds them of you. Behind closed doors, their emotional state becomes chaotic. They swing between anger and longing, superiority and envy. They may isolate themselves, overwork, overspend, binge on distractions, anything to avoid the truth gnawing at them. But nothing numbs the pain, because everything leads back to one terrifying realization. You didn't chase them, and now they can't stop thinking about you. What really destroys them is the shift in narrative. In their mind, they were the one walking away victorious, leaving you devastated. But your silence rewrote the story. Now they are the one left behind. This reversal hits their identity at its core. Narcissists can handle losing almost anything except control over the storyline. They begin obsessively monitoring you from the shadows, checking your stories, your posts, your interactions. But every time they look, they see something worse than heartbreak. They see your growth. You look more peaceful, more grounded, more yourself. That peace feels like a knife. It tells them you found the one thing they could never give you, emotional freedom. The narcissist's collapse deepens when they realize that your silence forced them to face themselves. Without your attention, they have nothing to project onto, nothing to deflect with, no one to blame. They are forced to sit alone with the version of themselves they've spent a lifetime avoiding. It's a psychological freefall with no one to catch them this time. And here's the brutal truth. Your silence is not just a boundary, it's a consequence. It exposes their fragility. It reveals their dependency. It dismantles their false sense of superiority. And the narcissist can't tolerate that kind of exposure. It makes them feel small, powerless, irrelevant, three sensations they fear more than anything. This is when the narcissist realizes their greatest nightmare. You moved on without needing closure, a final argument, or a dramatic ending. You walked away clean. And nothing is more devastating to someone who relies on chaos to feel alive. Your peace became their punishment. Your silence became their sentence. And for the first time, they understand they lost you for real. Here's the part they never expected. While they were busy waiting for you to break, you were rebuilding quietly, steadily, without their influence poisoning your progress. And the moment they sensed that shift, something inside them cracked. Because narcissists count on one thing: you, needing them more than they ever needed you. But now you don't need them at all. That truth burns deeper than any goodbye. The narcissist secretly hoped that time would weaken you, that distance would make you desperate. But instead, it made you stronger, wiser, more self. You became the version of yourself they never wanted you to meet, because this version can be manipulated. They hate this transformation, not because it hurts them emotionally, but because it steals the power they once owned. What haunts them most is not your silence itself, it's what your silence symbolizes. It means their influence ended, their spell broke, their importance died in your mind. Narcissists don't grieve people. They grieve the loss of control over them. And once that control is gone, they feel a kind of existential panic they can't explain to anyone. And here's the psychological twist. The more you heal, the more they decline. Your growth highlights their stagnation. Your confidence exposes their insecurity. Your peace contrasts their chaos. You've become living proof of everything they failed to be, everything they pretended to be, everything they could never sustain. Your becoming whole is their silent punishment. If they reach out Agnand, many do it won't be out of love or regret. It will be out of need, out of ego, out of fear that you've truly slipped beyond their grasp. They will test your boundaries, poke at your emotions, resurrect old memories, not because they miss you but because they miss who they were when they controlled you. Don't confuse longing with ownership. The truth is, you were never the weak one. You were the steady one, the patient one, the loyal one. And narcissists only recognize the value of stability once it's gone. Your absence created a vacuum they can't fill, no matter how many people they cycle through. They didn't lose a supply, they lost the one person who ever offered real emotional connection. Healing from a narcissist isn't just walking away reclaiming the parts of yourself they tried to erase. Your empathy, your clarity, your intuition, your voice. And the more you reclaim, the smaller they become in your memory. Eventually, you stop seeing them as the villain who destroyed you and start seeing them as the broken child who never grew up. This is where your freedom begins, understanding that their thoughts about you no longer matter. Their fantasies, their projections, their illusions, none of it has power anymore. You are no longer living inside their story. You are authoring your own. And in your story, they're no longer a central character, just a lesson, a chapter that taught you how to rise. Your silence wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. It was the closing of a door that should have never been left open. And the beauty of this moment, the part that brings everything full circle, is that your healing didn't require their apology, their recognition, or their understanding. You healed because you chose yourself, something they will never be able to do. So here is the final truth. The narcissist thinks about you far more than you think about them, but it no longer matters, because their obsession is their prison and your peace is your liberation. You didn't just walk away, you walked upward. And the last thing they ever saw was the version of you they never believed you could become. You won by leaving.